Welcome, and thank you so much for being here on your Friday night off in this church. I know you usually have that reserved for your Sundays, but I'm very happy you'll be so obliged to move it to the Friday night. And thank you for coming, and feel free to have a drink and relax. And I'm hoping to do some sinful thoughts, give you some sinful thoughts for tonight. I'd like to introduce myself to you for the people who don't know who I am. I'm Ancilla van Leest, and I'm a member of the advisory board of the Beehive4.2. I was also the party leader of the Pirate Party the past year. If you didn't vote for us, thank you. That's why I can be here tonight with you. and work on other awesome projects besides being in the Dutch Parliament and doing political things. I still hope to do political things because I find that technology, innovation, and politics go hand in hand, and you can't really see moving into the future apart from making political decisions, which is why I'm very happy to be involved in the Techcampus of the future, named Beehive4.2. Now, of course, you'll recognize the name 4.2 from Hack42, where we are today, because it's a logical sequel of the thing we're doing here at Hack42, and of the thing that we're doing here to promote interest in technology in general and in innovation in a way that's not aimed for profit, but aimed for curiosity and for innovation in a way to develop yourself and to also create a community with the people around you and make the world a better place in a way. So tonight we have a very honorable guest, Mitch Altman. He's done some amazing things for the hacker community worldwide. I'm super honored to have him here. Before we get started with that, and before he'll be here on this stage having his amazing talk, I'd like to introduce you to the concept of the Beehive. And Mitch afterwards will explain a little bit what this has to do with the international community of hackers and of technological innovation, and how we can basically make the world a nicer, safer, happier, and freer place using technology. So the story till now, you might have seen the koepelgevangenis, as we like to call it in Dutch, the panopticon, if you will. Panopticon is a concept that is often used when explaining the surveillance state, where you basically have one guard in the middle, and all of the inmates surrounded in the building that goes around in a circle, where all of the inmates feel watched all the time. And they can't possibly all be watched all the time, but they'll naturally feel that way because they can never tell when they're being watched and if they're not. So there's a couple of guards in the middle of the building, and all of the inmates surrounded around it. And all of the inmates feel watched all the time, which is why we call this the panopticon experiment, or the panopticon effect of society, of a surveillance state where everybody feels watched all the time. Every single thing you do can be monitored, stored, and analyzed all the time. Whether that's true or not, we don't know, but the possibility is always there. The hacker community in Europe is much more prevalent than it is in the US right now. We have a couple of hacker camps that take place in the Netherlands every 4 years, and in Berlin in Germany every 4 years. And it has grown to be this really awesome community of a couple of thousands of people who get together every 2 years, every 4 years in Holland and every 4 years in Germany, to talk about the future of technology and the impact that has on communities and on politics. But also to play with it and to be just creative with it in an innovative and fun way, and to have a sense of community and building something together that makes the world a more fun place for everyone. So Hack42 came out of that, and came out of that concept of getting together and building awesome things together. And we feel that Beehive4.2 is a natural progression of that, where people can't just go there every once in a while to be with their community, but they can visit for longer periods of time. You could even live there if you'd like, and stay there and work on a long-term project. So right now, you're seeing that less than 2% of the time we're spending time together and creating awesome, cool things because we have other obligations, or it's just simply too expensive to spend time together and to reside in a place and feed yourself. We'd really like to create a space where it's fairly cheap to stay there and work on things that might not necessarily make money, but that do work on building a better community, a better society, or maybe just having fun with like little gigs and trying stuff out, not knowing where it might lead. So in that way, it's more residential community. And this is not just for, it would be taking place in Arnhem, but this is not just for Dutch people, obviously. Arnhem is actually a perfect place to have a place in somewhat center of Europe, not too far north, not too far south, not too far west or eastern, but a place where you can easily go and be fairly centralized Europe. So in that case, it's very accessible for whatever country you come out of. So there's a couple of aims we have for this community. You can develop yourself in an individual way, in any way you see fit personally, without being judged or being or having to live up to expectations of sexuality or making a certain amount of money or looking a certain way. There's none of that. You can truly be who you would like to be, and you will not be judged for that. That is an essential part of this Beehive project. One of the other things is community, which does not necessarily stand apart from being an individual. As a matter of fact, by having a strong community and supporting one another, whichever way you want to build your life, you can support each other in that community and build a stronger community because of having the space to develop your individual persona. It's apart from norms. So whatever's going on in society, you can see that apart from what's going on within the Beehive community. If society is going a certain direction, we should create a space within the Beehive community where we feel free to go in a different direction. Other things are whenever we feel that the panopticon surveillance society around us is going in the wrong direction, maybe in our own panopticon prison, we can counter that. We can come up with an answer, a technological resolution to make sure that our own community is safe to develop itself in a way that we see fit. And it should be an alternative, of course, because we have a saying in Dutch that says, just act normal, you're being silly enough. As a matter of fact, we don't feel that way. You cannot be silly enough. Please be silly, because that's where the most innovative and most creative ideas come from. And there should be a place for that, where that is celebrated instead of stifled. This is what it looks like. We hope to purchase this sometime soon. There's a couple of bidders, and it's, as you can imagine, a popular place. I imagine we're going to need a bit more crowdfunding and a bit more community-driven action to acquire this building to make this awesome project a reality. And it won't only be a community space where you can be together and work on things just like in Hack42 right now. It should also be a place where you can sleep and where there's a couple of restaurants or other things like it. A couple of places where you can truly have the community feeling. As a matter of fact, there's a crowdfunding action right now where you can purchase a tile which leads from Central Station to the Beehive4.2. You can purchase this as with as little as €10.42 or €10,000.42. It's seen as a donation. You will be owning part of the Beehive project. You'll be of great contribution to it, and we'd be very thankful, of course. This is what it looks like up close. It's actually super, super high. You can probably fit a Boeing in there, so it's not a small place. You can easily fit a couple of hundred semi-permanent to permanent hackers in there. And this is the entry gate. It's an original panopticon prison, so this actually used to be where prisoners were held. And this is the inside, as you can see. So this is the current state of affairs within the building. But you can imagine if we get a free pass to do with it whatever we like, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with this place. This is the bird view. Oh, and there we go. So you can really see how big it is. If you have time tomorrow and you're doing Mitch's workshop, it only starts at 2 o'clock. So before that, you can actually visit the building if maybe you're on a bike or a car, or maybe you can take some public transport. It's really cool to walk around it. It's super huge. And it would be a very, very awesome space to let creativity take a go at it. These are the contributors. Jos Weijers, who couldn't be here tonight, unfortunately. And Arjen Kampuis, who couldn't be here tonight, unfortunately. Bart van den Hoven. Woot! Give him a little applause, please. Thank you so much. And Martijn. There we go. Yay! You kind of figured I'll go sit in the back so people can't see me, but that didn't work out too well. Sorry. And Helke. There we go. Thank you. And together, we hope to purchase this building, make it out of something really, really cool out of it, and make it into a free-thinking space within Europe, where people from all kinds of cultures can come and contribute their knowledge to technology. Adult supervision will be required because we'd like to have it a free and open space, and sometimes you might think of some things that are not, that will require some adult supervision. Bart Jacobs is one of the main contributors. With his thoughts, he's a scholar at university at cybersecurity. I'm sad he couldn't be here tonight, which is a shame, but he'll be here. He'll be visiting often. There's of course Yaya Balou from KPN. She gave the company a little workaround and a little upgrade with her technological vision of the future. And I think she has greatly contributed to making that company a little bit more hacker-friendly, and hopefully aspire to having an ethical vision for the future. And well, hey, that's me. And there will be more to come. And if you have any awesome ideas or thoughts or things to contribute, we need help. We need help in a creative matter. We need help in financial matters. And we need hands. We basically need hands and thoughts, ideas, anything you can contribute. If you feel like, hey, actually, I do have a lot of ideas for this super awesome space that's going to be a European hub for technology and for a technological, ethical vision for the future in Europe, please come to me after this talk and let's talk. I am super honored to introduce to you the next guest, which is Mitch Altman. I think you've probably heard of him from his innovative idea called the TV Be Gone, which has sold over 500,000 devices. Basically, it's a little device just like this, where you can go to a public place and turn off any television. So you might be at a Christmas dinner, or you might be at the airport, and or at a sports bar, and you'd be really annoyed with the TV that's there. You can basically turn it off, and nobody will ever know it's you. So that's pretty cool. Also, he was one of the founders of the American Hackerspaces Noisebridge in San Francisco. That's also where he is from. And he has a very inspiring vision of what technology can do for our communities and for our society in the future. He came all the way down from San Francisco, so please don't let him down and give him a warm applause, Mitch Altman.
Thanks everyone for being patient and while our food was delivered way too late. But hopefully I can rant at you in a way that'll make it worthwhile. And this is my actual real contact information, so please contact me anytime for any reason. I love helping people any way I can. Take a picture of that, I'll show that again. I can even make the slides available later. So I'm not a fan of conventional wisdom. You know, we can certainly learn from the experiences of others, and we need to. But if we're going to do anything really cool in our own lives, we have to do things in our own way. And this is true if you're a hacker, because hacking is all about exploring, seeing the world full of resources and making use of them, making your projects way cooler, sharing them. It involves lots of learning in ways that other people really haven't done before. It also is really true if you're going to be a good entrepreneur. If you're just going to rehash old stuff, who's going to pay you to do that? You need to do things in your own way. And again, learn from the experience of others. But you know, Silicon Valley is a place where the world is wanting to copy. But the thing is, Silicon Valley is not a place for conventional wisdom either. The reason Silicon Valley happened is because there are a bunch of weirdos in San Francisco. San Francisco is a place where a bunch of weirdos have collected for well over 100 years. San Francisco is a place where people are not only tolerated for being different, but encouraged and celebrated for being different. In Silicon Valley, there are a whole bunch of geeks way back in the 70s, back when it was actually kind of dangerous to be a geek. It wasn't accepted. People didn't have these things in their pockets if they could afford them. It was really weird to be a geek. And these people, though, they couldn't pass for being normal, so they were just their own geeky selves, and they were fascinated with computers. Computers weren't really a thing either, except for science fiction movies or these guys with thin ties in black and white. And these people, though, saw that the technology had gotten good enough that maybe there was enough technology and enough knowledge to make a computer that people could use on their own at home. And these people really wanted to do that. None of them could do it on their own, But collectively, they figured out how to do it, and they did it by coming together in community, forming the Homebrew Computer Club, among other communities. And collectively, they figured out many ways to make a small computer that was powerful enough to do lots of cool things that people could use at home. And then it turned out that other people thought it was cool too, because they weren't doing it for money. They were doing it because they thought computers were awesome. They are. They're really powerful, and they could do so many cool things with them. But then other people came along, like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, and saw, wow, other people think this is cool, maybe we can sell this shit. And they did. And that's not all good, but it did change the world, some for the better, some for the not better. But all of that happened because of these geeks coming together in community and doing what they thought was awesome. Unfortunately, we have a whole bunch of people around the world now wanting to copy Silicon Valley, and really what they're doing is copying Silicon Valley buildings and thinking that magic will magically happen in them. It doesn't work that way. So I'll talk a bit about that in my speech too, a little bit later. But I do want to say that I'm a happy worker. I love my job. I didn't always love my job, but for the past 13 years, I've made a living doing a project I love, which has been mentioned, TV Be Gone. I made it for me, and it turned out other people like it, and I saw an opportunity, and for the last 13 years, me and 12 friends have made a living from this project we really love. And I want to encourage everyone to consider that as a possibility. You can, perhaps, make a living doing what you love. That's an option. You can also make a living doing something you know you don't like. That's an option, too. You can also do something that's just kind of okay, that doesn't take a whole lot of energy, so that you can make enough money so you can live your life later, if later ever comes. That's an option as well. But I want to encourage all of you to explore and find things that really fascinate you, that you find meaning in doing, that's fulfilling when you do it. And maybe others will find that it's fascinating and meaningful as well. And those are the opportunities that if you want to, you can either become entrepreneurial or use your entrepreneurial skills, or find other people in your community who are entrepreneurial to make it available to other people, and maybe all of you can make a living from it. Just put that out there. So I've, for the last half of my life, really loved my life. And, but I didn't always love my life. In fact, the first half of my life, I was totally depressed. And I was targeted by bullies for being gay, for being fat, for being bad at sports, for not caring who wins, for being a geek, for being introverted, for all these things that bullies target. And even if all of it was true, I am an introverted gay geek who's intellectual and weird, but now I like that. But back then, I was just beaten up, and often as teachers watched. And the only good thing about the lack of money in the education, so-called education system in my country, is that we no longer have gym teachers, because those are the ones that watched as the bullies beat me up. My parents were clueless, they were depressed, and they didn't want to deal with my pain. They couldn't even deal with their own. Life was total hell, and when I got home, I retreated into the magical world of television, where everything was just totally dandy, where kids were beautiful and had understanding parents and loving friends, and problems that resolved at the end of the show, and I watched it hour after hour, and I didn't do anything worthwhile with my time, like learn how to deal with other kids, like do anything. And I would become more of a target at school as a result, making me want to come home and retreat into television all the more when I got home. And that's called addiction. And that was my first addiction, and I practiced it well. And I spent so much of my childhood just watching TV and not doing anything really worthwhile. And it was a long road, but eventually I did learn to live a life I love, and that's something I don't really have time to talk about here, but if anyone's interested, I'm way happy to share that journey if you think it's helpful for you. There's a lot of depression in our communities, which is why in 28C3 I did a Geeks and Depression panel, and that's online if you want to see it. But anyways, eventually I did learn to live a life I love by making choices for myself, and then learning from the consequences of those choices, gaining more information and knowledge along the way so I could hopefully make better choices along the way, and then learn from the consequences of them, et cetera, eventually learning to live a life I love. And a lot of that was by quitting television, making enough time so that I could actually have time to explore and try things out. So the first choice I made for myself was quitting television and doing a lot of geeky things as a result, which enabled me eventually to learn enough that I could make a living by helping small companies as a consultant, as a contractor, freelancer. And I did that for a long time. I actually got to a point fairly quickly where I could make enough money in 3 weeks to 3 months to not have to make any money for the rest of the year, giving me time to do all sorts of other amazing things. But the work itself was really draining, and it was always on other people's projects. There were a lot of cool ones, you know, like developing virtual reality is one of them, and working for a whole bunch of small companies doing sort of innovative things. But of course, every single one of them, the US military came along and wanted what we did, which made it all the more draining for me because I don't do anything I do to hurt people or to help spy on people, which is what the US military seemed to always want. So after doing that for a while, even though it was kind of cool, I wanted more than just kind of a cool life. So this was in 2003, I created an experiment for myself. I wanted to see what it would be like if I saved enough money to live a year and use that money for time to just do what I really love. What would life be like? What would your life be like if there were a whole year where the only thing you did was what you really loved doing? Of course, there's still things like laundry, we like clean clothes and things, but you know, what would your life be like if really what you chose to do always was based on what you thought was the most amazing thing you could be doing? A lot of people don't really have that opportunity. I was lucky enough to be able to make enough money, save enough money to live a year doing that, and so I did. And I didn't really know how, but I knew somehow I could, by doing what I love, whether it's one thing or a bunch of things, I could get enough of what I needed, enough resources to live my life so I could keep doing what I love, hopefully getting all that stuff from what I love. I didn't know what that would be, and it was kind of scary because I told all of these people I used to work for that, no, I won't do your project. And I didn't tell them, no, I'm not doing it because I don't love it, but, you know, like, will those people ever hire me again if I keep telling them no? But I knew somehow I could make it work. I don't know why I knew that, but somehow I knew I could do it, and I just had to do it because I wanted to live a life that was awesome, not just a life that was just kind of okay, and all of my time at work was just taking too much of my life away. So I was doing a whole bunch of volunteer stuff, and one thing leads to another, and I have all these projects that I wanted to play with in electronics. But I never played with them in these electronic projects, because when I came home from a work in electronics, I didn't feel like playing with electronics. So, but now I had time, and I had energy, and there were these cool projects, one of which was TV Be Gone, and this was 2003. It's kind of hard to imagine a world where there are not all that many TVs in public places, but they were starting to appear everywhere in the United States, and they were really bugging me because I got rid of it from my apartment way back when in 1980, giving me all the time to do all the cool things that I did, but they were all over in public places, and I couldn't do anything about them. But I'm a geek, so I did know that I could come up with a device to turn them all off, so I did. It took actually a year and a half, not a year, to finish it. But I was obsessed with this. You know, TV had this power over me for so long, and now I wanted to have power over it. And it took a while to get all the codes, because they don't publish them, who knew? And there were all these obstacles along the way, and I had to make my own data acquisition system, a logic analyzer, and I had to write all this software, and it was really hard, as it turns out. So, but I was really into it, and my friends were encouraging me, and my friends were actually helping me with various aspects of it, because they loved it, and I loved it, and we were obsessed, and we really wanted this to happen. And after a year and a half, I had the first prototype, and I'm going all over San Francisco, turning TVs off in public places and really loving it. And of course, my friends loved it too, and they all helped me, so I made one for all my friends, and they're going all over San Francisco doing it as well. And their friends saw it, and many of their friends wanted it, and they told their friends, and those friends of friends of friends wanted it. And that's when I saw an opportunity from this thing that I only did because I fucking hate TV. And I loved the project. So, I made as many as I could afford, which was 20,000, because the company that I'd started in Silicon Valley that I thought would be worth zero because the VCs took over like VCs always do and ran it into the ground. But before they did that, they sold it for $150 million, and I got $60,000, even though I was a founder. It's better than zero, and that was enough to buy 20,000 TV Begons, and I did the math, and it's like, well, you know, it was free money anyways if I lose it all. But if I sold 5,000, I'd break even. And that would mean that there'd be 5,000 people around the world turning TVs off in public places, and I thought that'd be really cool. And even if it took like 5 years or 10 years, it would just be really cool to have this, 5,000 people turning TVs off all over the place. But as it turned out, I was totally wrong. I didn't sell 5,000 in 5 or 10 years. I sold all 20,000 in 3 weeks. It was kind of crazy. It was an article in Wired.com that set it all off, and from that, National Public Radio in the United States called me up and interviewed me live after being up all night with my friend to get the website ready for the few people who might want to buy this quirky thing that they saw on Wired.com. But it was so popular, my website crashed. And at 9 in the morning, NPR, National Public Radio, called, and evidently I did okay, because immediately after that, New York Times called, and then People Magazine, and Fox TV, of all things, wanted me live in their studio, and I went there, and I'm turning off monitors in their studio as everyone's gasping and then laughing. And but it was really amazing, and it changed my life forever. I mean, there's no going back after that. And, I'm an introverted geek, and yet I was invited to give all these talks, and I'm talking to like 12 million people on live TV. But somehow that was kind of cool, because as an introverted weirdo geek, I could say whatever I wanted, and they would just broadcast it. What's not to like? So, yeah, anyways, for the last 13 years since then, me and 12 friends have made a living from this project that we really love. And here's the one slide with just text that I have today, because I think it's important. It's my definition of success. There's lots of definitions of success. I think most of them are very narrow. It's just like a bigger number in some bank account, banking system computer. Big deal. I mean, if you get enough doing what you love to keep doing what you love, what could be better than that for anyone? So, just something to ponder. And like I say all these things, it's obviously my opinion. I'm not telling you what to think. I just want to give you an opportunity, hopefully, to think about things in a new way. If you think you're differently and you disagree, totally fine. But I like saying provocative things. So doing this, though, got me invited to the first Maker Faire, and also to my first Hacker Conference. At the Maker Faire and the Hacker Conference, oddly enough, no one was making anything. it's a maker fair. No one was making anything. So I knew I wanted to help, and one of the things I love is teaching people to solder. So the next maker fair, I made sure there was that, and I started writing for Make Magazine. I did this weird project called the Brain Machine, and it was one of their most popular projects. This is my first hacker conference, Hope Hackers on Planet Earth. If you ever want to get free fingerprints and a free portrait, please come to Hope next July, and my government will give you free fingerprints and a free portrait. The NSA has free backups. So, but this was my first one, Hope 6. This will be the Hope 12 coming up next July. My first hacker conference in Germany was this one in Berlin, and out of anything I've done in my entire life, it was the most mind-blowing, wonderful experience ever, with thousands of people, like 2,000 people, so many of whom do what they love and enthusiastically sharing with one another and learning from each other, and it was just incredibly high. And just like all the other conferences before, it ends, and then I have to go back in society where most people don't do even what they like, let alone what they love. And then the next conference comes, and it's Chaos Camp 2007, where there's another 2,000 people and laser beams and LEDs more than you can possibly stand. And of course I did workshops, but hundreds of talks on a spaceship. One of the talks was about how to start your own hackerspace. And that inspired me and my friend Jake to start Noisebridge. And my friend Bree, who I met at the first Maker Faire, was there at my urging, and he went home and started NYC Resistor, and Nick Farr, who I'd also met through all this, started Hack DC. And together with the hackerspaces in Germany already, we're all helping each other and setting an example for other people who are watching to see how it worked, and it worked really well. So within a year, there were 100 more hackerspaces. And with a year after that, there were 500 more. And now there are thousands in the world. In 2008, we created hackerspaces.org, a wiki where anyone could put their forming or existing hackerspace up there. And this is actually an old map, because now China looks more like the North America and European, obliterated with dots. These things are just taken off everywhere. Because it's an amazing, fantastic place, a hackerspace. It's an amazingly fantastic place for people to experience real community, which we all need. It's also a place where we're encouraged to explore, where it's safe to fail, which is one of the best ways to learn, is by failing as well as by succeeding. And it's this incredible community that encourages people to explore and do things that you really like doing and hopefully love doing. I started, of course, teaching soldering. And this is an early picture from 2008 in Noisebridge, where I'm teaching people to solder. And it's not a big deal. It's just like melting a little bit of metal and make a blinky light or something. But look, I mean, people are engaged, they're happy, and it's just always the case. And it grew from there. I get invited to give workshops at other hackerspaces and at more maker fairs and more hacker conferences, and it just grows, and now I can teach lots of people at once. And again, I mean, they're just soldering, you know, what's the big deal? But look how happy they are when people come together in this temporary community to do something they think they might enjoy, and probably something they didn't think they could do, but then they see that they can, they're happy. And this kind of stuff happens at hackerspaces and certainly hacker conferences all the time. And it'll definitely be happening a lot at Beehive4.2. But tomorrow, if you want to experience this for yourself, come here and we'll have a soldering workshop at starting at 2 o'clock. But let's see, I've got a bunch of slides here that I just want to whip through. I started just going all over the world, but all over the world, doesn't matter what the culture is, people come together and they're engaged and they're happy. And you know, it's just soldering. It doesn't matter if it's origami, soldering, software, art, craft, whatever we do at hackerspaces. These are people coming together doing cool things. I do like giving talks, big ones and small ones. These are a whole bunch of Chinese bureaucrats coming to a talk in Hangzhou, China, to learn about how to start a hackerspace. Kind of amazing. Here's one in Brazil. Maker fairs grew to be a big part of my life, a really big part of my life. I put a lot of my heart and soul into it, and in 2011, I was awarded from people at Maker Faire the first and the last, as it turns out, Maker Hero Award, which they named after me. And that was like just, if you want to see a picture of me crying on video, you can search for this online. But the day after this, I found out that Maker Faire applied for and got accepted for a $10 million grant by the US military. So yet again, something that I did wanted to be used by the US military. And I just can't do that. I struggled with it for months and then decided that no matter what I did, it would feel like shit. But it would feel worse if I stayed and helped, knowing that I was in some way helping the military. So I quit Maker Faire. But whenever you stop doing one thing, that leaves time for doing more other things. So that actually got me invited to give this TEDxBrussels talk, where I gave a talk about how to start hackerspaces, the hackerspace movement. And a lot of hackerspaces started as a result, and that was really wonderful. I don't know, there's this little thing there that I gave the talk after this guy. I don't know if you can read it. It says Steve Wozniak. He's the one who designed the first Apple computer. That was an easy act to follow. But anyways, he's a cool guy. He was very gracious. If you want to see me having a good time being terrified, there's a video online of that. Anyways, I've been going around the world giving talks on hackerspaces, and I do my manufacturing for TV Be Gone in China, and I get invited to give talks about hackerspaces there. And all these people see that, and then they get invited to more, and it starts getting into universities and all these bureaucrats, like that big talk that I gave of all those bureaucrats back there. But I also started giving, bringing people with me. These are hacker trips to China. If any of you are interested in going on the one for this year, it'll be the last 3 weeks of October. Just ask me about it. But people want to give presentations and encourage people in China who need this kind of encouragement to explore, to try new things. Because after 2,500 years where everything in life was all about that one asshole at the top, the emperor, it's only been the last, very few years where people are actually being encouraged to explore and do things that are worthwhile in their lives. And from the government on the top down, they're encouraging this stuff. Here's a professor at the leading university in China, Tsinghua University, welcoming us at the Chinese Beijing airport. And most people think that that's a weird thing to see in China, but this is actually very common. Giving talks about hackerspaces grew from just a few people to whole rooms full of people, and other people start giving talks, and it eventually filters all the way to the very top of Chinese government. Here's the head of state, Premier Li, visiting a hackerspace that I helped organize in Shenzhen, China, made by, sponsored by, Seed Studio, with 3 E's, which is an open hardware company in China. But anyways, Premier Li goes there with media following all over the place, and in front of all of China live says, this hackerspaces are the future of China, both for personal growth, economic development, and also for education. And not to be outdone, last year, the White House in the United States had a White House Maker Faire. And this is a kid who made a marshmallow launcher. Yeah, So, anyways, hackerspaces. I presume all of you know about hackerspaces. Is there anyone here who hasn't been to a hackerspace? We're kind of in one. So, hackerspaces, it's all about community. You know, we all have tools, but it's not about the tools. In the US, there's this for-profit corporation, which is a great resource, but it's not a hackerspace. It's called Tech Shop. It's also kind of expensive, but they have really cool tools. It's about the tools. You pay for the tools. There's a little bit of community, which is really nice, and people help each other a bit for using the tools, but it's really about people using the tools and then going home. Hackerspaces, it's about community. It's really important that there's community. We do all these cool things together. We share, we learn, we teach together. There are all these people doing collaborative things together. You can do individual projects as well, and we're encouraged to do whatever it is we feel is really awesome. And people enjoy it, whether it's soldering or whatever. You know, there are tools that people in the community think are needed or useful or wanted for doing the cool projects they do. Here's one that does mostly mechanical things in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And hacking has all these different definitions. Of course, we all know the negative one perpetrated by the mainstream media starting in the United States in the 90s when computers starting to be networked, and there were a bunch of adolescent boys doing things of questionable ethics, to say the least. But they unfortunately called those people hackers, and so that's what most people in the world think of. But my definition of hacking is seeing the world as full of resources. The world is full of resources. We can use those resources any way we want. You know, money is one resource, but there's garbage, stuff that other people consider garbage, that we can use as materials to do our projects and make our projects cooler, see what works, what doesn't work, and then share with others. And that's hacking, and that's what the definition was from the beginning of the term as it was coined at the MIT Model Railroad Club, where they made awesome model railroads. And that was before computers, because it was 1953. There were computers, big mainframes only. So, but one of the big things is we do this because we really love it. We kind of have to do it. It's part of who we are. It's a way of living, a way of being. It's a way of seeing things. It's just amazing. And with seeing the world this way, we can do so much. We can do so much on our own, but we can do even more when we pool our resources, our skills, our knowledge, and experience together in community. And I'll say here, you know, like, being a good hacker is required for being a good entrepreneur. You can be a good hacker without being an entrepreneur. You can be an entrepreneur without being a good hacker, but you can't be a good entrepreneur without being a good hacker, because being a good entrepreneur is not just about making money. You'll make money because you see the world as full of resources and seeing what works and what doesn't and finding something that's way worthwhile, and then seeing that other people also see it's worthwhile, and then you see an opportunity, and then you have way higher chance of making money. It's not first and foremost and primarily thinking of making money first. If you do that, the chances of making money are slim. So everything can be hacked, not just tech, but art and science and all these other things, and of course our communities, ourselves, and the planet. Everything needs to be improved, and it's up to us to do it. So whatever tools we use in our communities is fine, whether it's electronics or fabrication or hand tools, whether it's through art or cooking. All of these are being done at hackerspaces, and it's for people of all ages. Some hackerspaces are just for little kids, some are just for older people, some are for all ages. It's being done as in schools as well, because they're fantastic learning environments. The best way to learn, according to all of these studies done on educational theory, is by project-based, hands-on, play-based learning. Because if you explore, make time to explore, and you find things you really like, and you come up with a project you really like, you think is really like fascinating, you're passionate about, if you have a community of people encouraging you to do that and other people to learn from, now you're really motivated to learn all you can to make your project as good as possible. And if you don't have what's available in your own community to learn what you need to learn, now you are really motivated to learn the theory and maybe even go to school to learn it in the more traditional way, so-called traditional way. But more and more schools are picking up on this because schools, I'll have a slide for this a little later, are all about taking tests. That's not learning. In the United States, it's gotten so bad, but it's only about, when you go to school as a little kid, you're trained to take a standardized test because the school district is pressuring the principals of all the schools, is pressuring all the administrators, pressuring all of the teachers to do better on these standardized tests, because if you don't do better on the standardized tests, they close down your school. And nobody wants the school closed down. So all of teaching is training the kids to take tests, which is horribly boring. But now, more and more, now that No Child Left Behind, supposedly, or allegedly, No Child Left Behind was the name of the standardized test program in the US, set up by W, that has not been extended. So now schools are latching on to other means to actually educate the people, the students. And so they're latching on to project-based learning. And at Hackerspaces, hopefully at schools at some point too, it's all about supportive community for people to explore and do what they really find exciting, people of all ages. And this is really how actual innovation happens. I don't know if you've noticed, but if you've talked to any bureaucrats or listened to the news, you've probably heard the word innovation more than once or twice. What does that mean? Well, when it's a buzzword, it's lost its meaning. And they use the word creativity. It's also lost its meaning. But true innovation, actual innovation, happens when people are exploring and finding things that totally excite them. Because then they find things that are perfect for them, which probably means that it's also perfect for their local community. And if it's perfect for them, that means that they'll actually come up with something that can change things for the positive, something new and unique. This is how it happens. And if it is good for you and your community, then you might find an opportunity that if you want to, you don't have to, but if you want to, maybe you can possibly make a living from those innovative ideas. Goods and services are needed that change the world for the positive. Not just things like, whoop-de-doo, I'm going to come up with this idea. It's an app. It's an app for doodahs that's painted orange. And you can manipulate people through manipulative marketing techniques that are very effective into buying that. You can do that. There are investors who would love to help you do that and then take over your company and run it into the ground and then fire you when you complain. That's kind of the norm. If you want to copy Silicon Valley, that's what you got to do. I wouldn't recommend it, though. So anyways, back in 2007 when we started Noisebridge, there were 40 hackerspaces, and like I said, there's thousands now. And a lot of that has changed in all around the world because bureaucrats, including the head of China, are pushing for this stuff. When this guy went on national news in China and said, hackerspaces are the future of China, every bureaucrat in China felt that they had to start a hackerspace in order to be cool. Unfortunately, they don't know what hackerspaces are. So all over China, there are places called hackerspaces that look like this. That's not a hackerspace. It could be perhaps a really nice co-working space if there were someone there. But that's not just China. That's all over the United States in economically depressed places as well as all over Europe. We don't need these. co-working spaces would be really nice once people have an idea that's worth having a startup to have when you have an idea where you have a worthwhile startup, then you need a co-working space to actually bring your idea into reality. But the only way it's going to happen is if you have a community that has an environment that encourages this kind of creative environment. But China actually does have really cool hackerspaces, just like everywhere else in the world. And here's just a few of them. And they're amazing. I mean, just groups of people who are playing, people of all ages, and people doing all sorts of things, and even in schools and museums and libraries, just like everywhere. So another thing I wanted to mention is I've been I've been kind of working on pushing this out in the world for quite a while now. We even have a map on hackerspaces.org for this, but hacker in residence. So there's been this notion of artist in residence for many, many years, where an artist is invited to a particular community, artist community, to share their experience with the other artists in that community. The artist who goes there learns a lot from that community and brings that home with them or to their next place. The community gets the experience of that artist and all of their experiences. But why limit it to just what people consider art? That can be everything. So Hacker in Residence is something that would be fantastic, and I have the domain hackerinresidence.org, and I'm working on getting the website up, and it'll be ready definitely this year, even if I have to pay for it, so that any organization can put opportunities that they would like to invite a resident, whether they have a big budget, a little budget, or no budget. Anyone in the world can look through those opportunities and apply, and the website, of course, is all free, because this should be available to everyone. And this is a great way for people who want to like just go from hopping to space. They can make a living being a hacker in residence. But it's also great for people to come from the outside, learn from these communities, and cross-pollinate, and encourage people all the more to explore and do what each person in that community thinks is really amazing for themselves. So there's a pretty good number. This was actually a year ago when this picture of this map was taken, but it's growing. So I think it'd be great opportunities, and this would be a fantastic thing as part of Beehive. I think would be really a fantastic match. So another reason that bureaucrats really love hackerspaces is because education sucks everywhere. It really is much more like this. Rows and columns with an authority figure at the front, spouting information that's supposed to be memorized just long enough so that the students can parrot it back on a test and get a good score. That's not actually learning. It's not preparing people for a life they want to live. It's not preparing people for even a worthwhile job. If it is training for a job, by the time the job market is changing so quickly nowadays, by the time they get out of school, they're obsolete. So this just doesn't work, but project-based learning, as we practice it at Hackerspaces, does, and which is why schools are incorporating them. Little kids schools, middle kids schools, high schools, universities, colleges, grad schools, they're all incorporating these things, and there's funding for this. China's probably the biggest place right now, interestingly enough, but this stuff works, and it's very contagious. Another reason bureaucrats really love hackerspaces is for economic development. You say the word innovation and economic development and creativity all in a row, and bureaucrats' eyes bulge out in excitement. And if you can give them an opportunity for that, then maybe you can get some money that's available. There's a lot of economic problems right now. The leaders running the show in my country, and many in this part of the world as well, and they're doing a really good job in making things actually spiral down by the corrupt taking regardless of consequence that so many people tend to be doing. We're also right in the middle of a tech bubble, and every bubble is going to burst, and people who are at least a little bit farsighted know this, and they're looking to see what's next so that everything just doesn't go down the drain. But with the problems come opportunities, because there are people looking a little bit ahead. And so there are all of these programs in Europe, in China, even the United States, where the government is giving money from the top down to help shift things a bit, to help encourage actual education, to prepare people to live lives they want to live, for giving people the tools they need in order to be agile enough to change as the job markets change, to help people more effectively form communities that can support each other, that are super inexpensive, but that can go a long way sharing resources for helping one another. And this is why the governments around the world are all giving money to hackerspaces and also to co-working spaces. But co-working spaces on their own aren't so useful because there aren't going to be very many good startups, good startup ideas, unless you have places like hackerspaces where people can explore and try things and see what works and what doesn't. Once they find things they like, then other people might like it too, and then they find an opportunity, then they have a worthwhile idea for a startup, and then you need co-working spaces, and there are a lot of good ones in the world, and we need more. There's also one specific for training for given kinds of businesses, and those are incubators and accelerators, are kind of the same thing. But this is an unprecedented time where money is coming from the top down. We need to be sure that that money is given to people who can create community from the bottom up. Because if we don't do that, we're going to find those spaces like I showed you that are totally empty, and all the bureaucrats are going to go, I didn't get rich from this. I didn't get a feather in my cap for this. This was a waste of time and money. Why did we do this? It's stupid. And it's an opportunity lost, not only for all of us, but for the world. We really do want places like this with community and not this. So I will drive this home one more time. Entrepreneurship has to happen this way. You start not by saying, I want to make money. If you start that way, the chances of making money are incredibly small because almost every startup fails. Very teeny, small fraction of 1% go beyond a year. But if you start by exploring, and this works so much better in a place like a hackerspace where there's a supportive community for just this, not necessarily for entrepreneurship, but just for exploring, because it's incredibly joyful to be part of a community like this. But you explore, you make time, you explore, you find things that are interesting. Do more of those things, less of what's less interesting. Try things, see what works, what doesn't work. Do more of what works, do less of what doesn't. Learn from all of that. Keep doing that. Try things. Fail more. Try again. Fail more. Learn from it. Try again. Fail more. Success with some things. Learn from that too. But keep trying. It's a roller coaster, but keep doing it. It is fun, even with all of the ups and downs. And then you find things that you love. And if you love it and you find meaning in doing it, it's fulfilling for you, then other people in your community are probably going to love it too, because it's not only perfect for you, it's probably perfect for other people in your local community. And if it's perfect for other people in your local community, maybe it's something they'll actually pay you to do if you want to. You don't have to, but it is something to consider. And then you have an idea that has at least some probability of success, and now you have an idea that can be a worthwhile and not a stupid startup like almost all the startups in the world. And I'm in ground zero for that. There are a lot of amazingly stupid startups in San Francisco now. But, we need these kind of creative environments. We need them. We need them for each individual, all of us. Schools and universities need them so we actually have real learning environments to prepare people for living. And we need them in co-working spaces so that there are worthwhile startups in them, and incubators and accelerators, same. It's all about community. So, but we're also seeing them not only in schools and co-working spaces, all these things, but also in museums and libraries, because it's so great. We really do need this, because the world right now, you may have noticed, is being run by people like this. We can't do anything about these fuckers, but we can get together and share our resources and support each other into doing amazingly cool things. We can, and I think we really should. And it's incredibly fun to do so why not do that? And in so doing, we're making our lives better and the lives of those around us better, and creating more opportunities for everybody. So that's my rant for today.
Are there any more questions? I'll let you think about that for a little while. I'm sure you'll come up with at least a couple. Okay, there's somebody ready here for you.
Check. Okay. Do you know the principal of the Sudbury Valley schools?
Say again?
Do you know the principal of the Sudbury Valley schools?
Sudbury Valley. I do not.
It's a democratic school, which is actually something you just spoke about. It's about people trying, searching for things, and it's not about testing. And we are very lucky that we have one very close here by in Driel. Primary school and secondary school now. But
this sounds like an invite, is it not?
it is.
Do you work there?
I teach there. Well, no teacher. I inspire there. That's maybe different.
Indeed, because well, like teaching now has a bad rap because now we're evaluating teachers with tests too in my country. But yeah, there are good schools, and there have been for a long time. I mean, Waldorf, started by Rudolf Steiner. There's some interesting ideas and some not so, but there are a lot of great ideas in there, and it's really about encouraging creativity. And there's Montessori schools, and there are all these colleges and universities that are based on people actually getting together and learning from each other rather than competing and taking tests. So unfortunately, it's really, really small, but I'd love to take you up and visit that.
We talk about it later then.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Oh, really? All right, so a great talk. I have a question though. You started out by, it's a long question, sorry, I need to introduce it a bit. You started out by explaining that Silicon Valley started as a silly place. So people were experimenting, people were allowed to be weird, kind of like you have hackerspaces now. And then the money came in. So you have venture capital, they're spending cash, they're buying startups, they're bringing a lot of money with them. Then in nearly the same breath, you mentioned that there's hackerspaces that are really silly and they're doing good things. But again, money is coming in. How do you prevent hackerspaces becoming the same way as the companies that started out in Silicon Valley?
That's a really great question. I have this question too.
You can't. You can't prevent anything from happening. We have no control over anything. We don't have control over ourselves. We don't even control what we think and feel. How are we going to control whether money destroys a community or not? But we can try. And so when the US military gave that 10 million that was asked for by Maker Faire, that year, 2011, they were giving away lots and lots and lots of money to hackerspaces in the US and actually a little bit outside of the US. A few took them up on it. Almost none did. Because there's strings attached. Whenever money comes in from an external source, there's strings attached to it. No matter how much you repeat the mantra, like Maker Faire did, and like all these other people did who accepted the money, no strings attached, no strings attached. Did you know there's no strings attached? There's no strings attached. No strings attached. There's fucking strings attached. Big ones, ropes, huge nets made out of rope. It's attached. So it's up to each of us to decide what money we need and what to do with it if we do need it. And if the strings are too great from the money that's available, maybe we can rethink of what to do with our time, because if you don't do one thing, there's plenty of time to do other cool things. So it really is about the communities and what we do within them. Community's hard work. It's always going to be hard work, and how to finance what we need that does require money is part of that hard work, because people have different ideas of what's okay and what isn't. At Noisebridge, we have only one rule. Seriously, one rule only, and that's be excellent to each other. And that's subjective, and we have to keep talking about that. And that's part of what makes the community so difficult, but it's a huge part of what makes it so wonderful. Because we have a strong culture that we started off with that continues to evolve, and we don't go into dogma because our one rule is subjective. We have to keep talking about it, and we keep talking about what is and isn't excellent as far as accepting money. Almost all of our budget comes from lots and lots and lots, thousands of small donations from individuals. In our 10-year history now, we've accepted 3 grants, none of which we asked for. So we have turned down big grants that we didn't ask for as well. I don't know if you know who Peter Thiel is. PayPal. So PayPal spawned a lot of assholes. And Peter Thiel's an interesting person. I don't really jive with a lot of what he's done, but some of the things he's done is interesting, but he also created an organization called Palantir, which is all this military and whatever surveillance state stuff. So he said, here's $10,000. He started a thing called 20 under 20, is that it? Anyways, a thing where he gave 20 people under 20 years old, $100,000 not to go to university because he thought people could do better with their time and money. It's in San Francisco, and so all the people who did that found Noisebridge and were doing cool things there, and he thought Noisebridge was cool, so he said, here's $10,000, but we decided not to take it because there were too many things that too many people at Noisebridge felt were not excellent. There was another grant we turned down, but we just did take a grant. We took a grant from the Knight Foundation, which is an organization that wanted to support Noisebridge because we have a lot of independent journalists there. And we talked about it for 3 weeks. Should we take this money? Because we can't guarantee that we'll spend it on journalism. So and someone said, well, why don't we just ask them? Is it okay if we take this money and not spend it on journalism? And they said yes. So another week of discussion, and then we decided to take it because we're clearly no strings attached. So yeah, money's powerful. Economic control, we all have parents, right? Economic control works. It can really manipulate people into doing things they don't want. And but it can also encourage people to do things they do want if it's given by the right people for the right reasons. So make those choices, see what works, do more of what works, less of what doesn't. Maybe it'll work out. At Noisebridge, it's worked out for 10 years. The hackerspace movement continues to grow. Some are becoming more just commercial. And that's, as things become mainstream, we live in a capitalist world, so that's going to happen. But there's still zillions that are just communities of people encouraging each other to explore and do things that are cool. Let's see if that continues. I'm going to do what I can.
Did that answer your question? Do you want to continue asking questions? You can. He's here now. This is your chance. I do have a question, actually. So best case scenario, lots of these hackerspaces pop up all over the world. What will be the best scenario that comes out of them?
I have a dream. So more like a fantasy. So like right now there's, I don't know, like 4,000 or 5,000. We don't even know how many hackerspaces in the world. Maybe 1,000 of them are stupid, but because they're just places for non-existent startups. But yeah, but even if all of them were really wonderful, that's nowhere near enough opportunities for the 7 billion people on our planet. Hackerspaces provide incredible opportunities for people. People like us can go there, and there's all these resources there. There's electronic parts, there's maybe sewing machines and material and filament for 3D printers, whatever it is your community has, it's available. Plus all these people to draw from and learn from, and people you can share with, and get warm fuzzies all over the place and experience real live community. Even though it's hard work, it's fantastic and we need it. Amazing opportunities come from all of that. But what is that, like 100-some thousand people have this opportunity? That's a teeny percentage of 7 billion. We need millions and millions of these kind of spaces. Not necessarily all hackerspaces, but community spaces that are really perfect for the people who start them and keep them going. All of them, I would hope, would continue as we have up till now, help each other wherever it makes sense. That's how the whole hackerspace movement started. You know, having that talk at Chaos Camp 2007 about how to start a hackerspace, and then me and Jake and Bree and Nick and several other people thinking, wow, this is great, and we all help each other, along with the hackerspace people in Germany and Vienna, Austria, helping each other make this happen. And then as new ones come up, we're helping the new ones, and as new ones continue to come up, we continue to help. Each one is unique. Each one's perfect for the people who start it and keep it going. So each community is different. People can draw from this community for some stuff, for this community for another. They can hang out here for a while, go over there for a while. Some people will just stay in one of these and just make it totally cruise, whatever. We all contribute as it feels wonderful to do so, and we all learn and draw from it because it's all available. So if there are millions and millions of these things, I mean, what if the world were a place where, except in like way remote places, anyone could walk, 5 to 30 minutes and be at a hackerspace or some kind of community space like this, all having opportunities like this, each one having all these people come up with ideas that are spurring on the local economy, all of them having these things that people can come and learn so they can go off and live lives that they want to live. I think it could be amazingly positively transformative for our planet. So that's my fantasy.
Then, of course, I have the follow-up question to that. What's the worst-case scenario that will happen to hackerspaces if they, say, do get taken over by big money?
Well, I think the worst case is that there will be lots and lots and lots of places that are called hackerspaces or that have a nod to something called hackerspaces that are just these places where the military is using them to have cheap labor. And then there are all these places that investors are wanting to create the next Apple or the next Google, which just isn't going to happen, and it all kind of falls apart. But that's the worst case, is that a bunch of that happens and then it kind of goes away and we missed our opportunity. But that won't mean that there aren't thousands of hackerspaces with incredibly wonderful communities that continue.
All right. I see somebody standing up. Do you have a question?
Yeah. Maybe there's another worst case scenario is when people or hackerspaces are going to accept money from top down and becoming too depending on it, and money from top down always stops flowing. So always stops flowing at some point. So one of the important things might be keep your independence.
That wasn't so much a question, was it?
No, it was more an addition to, yeah, sure.
Do you have a question? To
really.
Mitch, who's standing here right now. Once in a lifetime opportunity, guys. Come on.
No, he's coming back sometime.
Talk about that. Yeah, so there's a really good example of how that can go wrong. So money or other resources. There's a really amazing group of people who created a biohacker space in Paris called La Paillasse. And they started in a squat. And they moved out and got a bigger space because they got a whole bunch of free stuff from hospitals that replaced their old equipment. And just as they were thinking they needed bigger space because they had so much stuff, they got from the mayor of Paris an amazingly beautiful building. Amazingly beautiful, like from like 16th century or something like that. It's really beautiful right in the middle of town. But they had a year in order to come up with a business plan that could generate €1 million a year, because that's the rent after the year that was free for the first year. They were kind of wasting time at the beginning. They didn't come up with good ideas, and then they started exploring ideas that were antithetical to their very existence, just to keep this beautiful building. So yeah, it almost destroyed their community, and a lot of people left. They still exist. I'm not really sure what the state of them, what the state is now. But yeah, it's really important to not rely on this kind of money. At Noisebridge, that was part of our discussion before taking these grants. Like if we took the Knight Foundation $10,000, thinking that we're going to get another 10,000 next year and another 10,000 the next year, then they would have control, because even if they're cool people, they would just say, well, you know what? We told you we didn't care if you use this money for journalism, but you know, we're getting tired of this. And then we would have to start a journalism program or something. But we just decided this is free money. We'll use this for some cool stuff for this, and we're never going to see it ever again. So, yeah, there's always strings attached. Because, like, let's say somehow I got $300 million. I don't know how that would happen, but if it did, okay, you know, people think, okay, Mitch is a cool person, and Mitch is offering some part of that $300 million for our hackerspace. You know, I don't know how I'll react or respond when I'm in a position to control various hackerspaces. You know, like I want hackerspaces to be cool, but what's cool? That's up to me. It shouldn't be up to me. It should be up to the hackerspace what's cool. And so yeah, even if it's someone in the community, suddenly if they're giving a lot of money, they have a lot of power. Power's addictive. Money's addictive. We all know what happens when things are addictive. So, so yeah, but life is fascinating. Part of what makes it fascinating is our propensity for addiction, and also these kind of obstacles and challenges. So think about it. Think about it as best you can, and choose to the best of your collective ability whether to take what money from whom when, and make the best of it. And hopefully that won't destroy you. And if it doesn't, you'll grow stronger as a community and live and learn better.
I assume you will be available tonight a little bit for drinks and conversation and cat petting. There's some cat petting there, yeah. There's one more question. Excellent, yeah. Excellent.
Hi, I have one more question, because the example you just gave about the Parisian biohacker space, it kind of reminds me of this Beehive4.2, because it looks like a huge space with a huge cost factor. And how can this be avoided, this fate that you just described in Paris?
Well, it's a really good question. A business plan has to be in place to pay for it, hopefully before it starts. If this isn't in place before it starts, I think that's a recipe for a lot of people to be under a lot of stress, and people don't behave the best under stress in general. So I recommend coming up with a business plan that you truly, collectively, all have that you're all behind and believe will really work and that you think is really, really wonderful. So not just a way to make money, but a way to to get all the resources you need to keep this amazing project going in a way you really believe in. So, and do that before you buy it.
Excellent. Any more questions? Alrighty. So I'd say let's get some drinks. Tomorrow you have a workshop at 2 o'clock right here in Hack42. Are you enjoying Hack42?
Yeah, this is great. I've been wanting to come here for as long as I've heard of it, which is since it started. When was that? Like 5 years ago or whatever? 2007. 10, okay, yeah. So I lose track of time. And I finally made it, so thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Glad to have you here. Thanks so much. You'll be around tonight and tomorrow. Come to the workshop. You won't regret it. You'll have fun and learn new stuff. And be smarter next week. Isn't that a good deal? All right. Thank you so much.